want to, as I did early this morning, reiterate my thanks to our first responders, our fire and emergency crew in particular, for the incredible work that they have done. I've had the opportunity to speak with some of the people who were on scene when that first call came in, and it was clearly a really difficult set of circumstances that they confronted when they got here, and a lot of work over the last few hours to get people out of the building, to stabilise the building, and now a difficult job ahead as they ascertain when they can get back into the building to do the next difficult and tragic part of this process. So I want to really reiterate my thanks on behalf of all New Zealanders to the fire and emergency team who have done incredible work over the last period of time, and acknowledge that they're really feeling this as well. I think any fire that involves someone passing away is difficult for our first responders, but a situation like this is really difficult. We've not seen an event of this scale for quite some time, so they'll be really feeling this as well. I know that they have done everything that they could, and I just want to reiterate our thanks and our gratitude to them for what they have endured over the last few hours, and of course reiterate again our sympathy for the victims and for the people who care about them, their family, their whānau, and their loved ones. A really difficult morning, and can I just also acknowledge the other MPs, our local mayor here as well, who have been able to join me in saying thank you to all those on the front lines who have been leading this response.
Prime Minister, we've heard of some pretty harrowing survival stories from those who were lucky enough to escape, many of which though are now without a home. What support and what message do you have for them?
So I'm going to hand over to the local Member of Parliament, because I know he's been up at the evacuation centre talking to the very people concerned and making sure that they're getting the support that they need. So I'll hand over to him.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Yeah, I've just been up at the Newtown evacuation centre. There are some extremely traumatised people there. Surrounding them are representatives of every agency you could think of, from the police and fire and emergency, MSD, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the City Council, the City Mission, the Downtown Community Mission, the Salvation Army. So all of those agencies are coming together, and the number one priority is to give people a warm, dry bed tonight to sleep in. So we're pulling all the different resources of all those agencies together to do that. MSD have got a team there working through each individual person, as well as obviously the MSD office that's not terribly far away from where we are standing right now. So that is 100% understood. Many people there have lost absolutely everything that they had. So it's about clothes, it's about kai, and it's about making sure they've got somewhere to stay.
What's the latest update that you've received on numbers of deceased, state of the building, number of unaccounted people?
So there's no update since the numbers that were released earlier on, which is there are a number of fatalities. The advice that we have at the moment is that it's still in that less than 10 range. But obviously, once they get into the building again and are able to do the thorough search and begin extracting the deceased, then we'll have more up-to-date information.
So what did Vince brief you on earlier?
Largely we were talking about the nature of the incident, what they confronted when they first arrived, how they approached it. What they did when they got here. They're confident that they've got the fire sort of under control. There's a few hot spots that they're still working on, but the focus right now is, which we were able to talk about, is just making sure that the building is structurally sound so that they can get the teams in order to do the next part of the process.
So what is the latest on the structural integrity of the
building?
building?
That's something that they're working on right at the moment.
Is there any update on the cause?
No.
When have they told you that they're expecting to access the building?
Well, as you will have seen, they had a drone flying over just before. That's part of collecting the information that they need, using thermal imaging and so on, in order to collect the information that they need in order to make that judgment call. You may have seen some of the USAR team who have been also just gathering information on the structural integrity of the building. That will inform decisions about who goes in and when.
Have they given you an estimate on how many hours from now until you expect to get into the building?
What I might do is hand over to the experts who are here, and they can give you a first-hand answer to that.
Is there a timeline that you're working to at this point for accessing the building?
Not at this stage. We're just going to understand exactly what our USAR team with an engineer came across, looking at the structural integrity of the floor and the roof. We want to make it absolutely safe that when our people go in for more operations and to eventually look at investigation, that that it is safe for them to do so.
Do
So
we
have
expect
they-
to have crews in there in the next few hours?
Yes, we will have crews in there in the next few hours.
So do we have areas in the building that haven't been canvassed yet, and therefore can't rule out that we may find more deceased there?
Unable to confirm at this stage.
From the pictures,
Is there any concern still that the roof may collapse?
That will depend on the feedback I get from our USAR structural engineer when I go back and brief them shortly.
from the pictures captured from the drone, have you seen them, or have they been described to you, and what is it like from above?
Oh, it's a burnt out roof.
Prime Minister, what were your initial reflections on seeing it in person?
Obviously, it's quite confronting, and also just to speak to the first responders who are on the scene in terms of what they dealt with when they arrived in the small hours of the morning. Clearly, a traumatic situation for them. I know that they'll be feeling this at the moment. They've just had a crew change, so some of those people who were on the scene right at the beginning, they'll be getting a bit of a break now. So I didn't get a chance to see some of them. They will have already left the site, but I want to acknowledge them in particular. They've had a long night.
Have you received a briefing on why this building didn't have sprinklers or other matters relating to fire safety?
In terms of the specific building itself, no, I haven't. Obviously, I'm aware that in terms of some buildings, it's to do with the age profile of the building. The regulatory requirements around sprinklers do differ depending on the age of the building, and so there'll be an ample opportunity to look at that. Of course, a number of investigations take place after an event such as this. That kicks in automatically. So there's obviously the police, the coroner. There are a range of different investigations that take place, and of course we will follow those, and we will await any findings that come from those.
Has it made you reflect on whether we need to do more work around checking fire safety regulations on accommodation providers?
Well, I think what it does reiterate is that we have these requirements, we have regulations in place for a reason. And this isn't just a bureaucratic exercise. We have regulations in place around health and safety for buildings because bad things can happen. And it is important that we regularly review those, as we always will, to make sure that we're providing people with the level of assurance that they deserve.
But do you think this could prompt any further checks?
I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but at this point I think it's a bit premature.
Prime Minister, when were you called with the news of this incident, and what was your initial thought?
I got the message as I was preparing to do the morning media interview, so it would have been sometime between 6 and 7 this morning. And obviously my first concern was for the people on the scene here, so the people who potentially were trapped in the building, and of course our first responders.
Last year, COVID-19, extreme weather, and obviously vulnerable people fare the worst when we have economic pressures. Now there's going to be people that are traumatised from this incident. What's your message to the country going through yet another really serious incident?
So we will get through this. We'll make sure that the victims here are supported. We'll make sure that our first responders are supported as well, because for our fire and emergency crews who are on the scene, clearly this is a traumatic incident for them as well. I know that they put everything they could into getting people out of the building. It is an absolute tragedy what's happened here. So of course, there'll be an opportunity to investigate and to look at what happened and why it happened and whether more could be done to prevent these sorts of things in the future. But I acknowledge that, we've had a bit of a rough run of it, but we'll get through it as a country by supporting each other. I know that this is a close-knit community that we're standing in here. It's one that I know well, and I know that the community will come together to support each other.
Chris?
You saw initial assurances that fire and emergency staff were adequately resourced for going into this incident?
So the feedback that I've had here on site is that they had everything that they needed.
And do they have everything they need in terms of providing support to Fence staff who are faced with some pretty things this morning?
We'll certainly make sure that they do, and the Minister is here as well, and we'll be continuing to work with Fence to make sure that those staff do get any support that they might need.
Prime Minister, what's your message to Wellingtonians? This has been labelled as a once-in-a-decade fire for them.
This is a major event. We've not seen something on this scale in recent times. And so Wellingtonians will feel this. Wellington's a small community, and particularly here in this community, it's a very tight-knit community. So people will be feeling this today, and I think, I know the community will support we'll band together and support each other. But I might ask the local Member of Parliament to comment on that as well.
Suggested the Mayor might
Or the Mayor, sorry.
say something.
There you go.
Just before that,
I'll just quickly say, obviously thank you to the Prime Minister and fellow MPs, but we know this is a truly tragic outcome, and one we certainly didn't want to see, but I know that our community, our diverse and wonderful community, will come together and support us. As mentioned earlier, there is a Mayoral Relief Fund that has been set up through the Wellington City Mission, so if people would like to contribute to that, they can go to the website and we'll confirm our input into that soon. But this is a time where we all come together and help each other out.
Does that fund get contribution from central government?
We haven't actually considered that yet, but we're certainly here to support, and all our agencies are involved in doing everything we can. Many of the people who will be beneficiaries of that are people that we work with every single day as well.
Wouldn't rule it out?
No.
Tory, are you expecting the council will make a contribution to that as well?
Absolutely.
Do you have any idea on what that will be?
We're just sorting out the amount now. We've also had another update where, so we were hosting a large-scale event tomorrow night. We've cancelled that, and some of the resource that was being put into that event will now be diverted to those in need.
What was the event?
The Tākina Convention Opening.
When do you hope to decide what contribution will be made?
The office is sorting that as we speak.
So today, tomorrow?
Today, certainly today.
Just going back to the victims of this tragedy, families trying to get in touch to find out, some that may have family members wanting to find out if their family member is involved and still unaccounted for, a police updating them, a fire talking to them, what's the communication?
I can fill you in on that because I was just up at the evacuation centre. FEMS and the police are pulling together effectively a master list of everybody who they believe was in the building, and then cross-checking that against those who are up at the evacuation centre or are otherwise accounted for. There are a lot of people who are desperate to find out what's happened to their loved ones. It is challenging in these situations to do that quickly. Obviously, there are also the processes around next of kin that need to be followed as well. What we've been told is that people are asked to call the police 105 number to be able to register that they're looking for somebody, and they'll move as quickly as they can to process that.
Have you had any information at this point that it was a fully booked out lodge in terms of there's 92 beds, is that the case?
I believe so, and I believe the beds were full last night.
Are there any immediate concerns around asbestos or any other safety hazards other than the structural integrity of the building? Any immediate concerns around asbestos or any other safety hazards other than the structural integrity of the building?
We're working very closely with regional public health at the moment just to determine if there are contaminants that have spread, whether it's airborne or whether they're still around. So we can't give details on that yet, but we are investigating to make sure that our community will return safe to their houses.
Thanks
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all the latest news from the New Zealand Herald. Click the subscribe button below or check out one of the videos here, and head over to nzherald.co.nz for more details on these stories and more.